Welcome to the Dynasty Evaluation Show. I'm John McGlynn. Got some guests today, some reoccurring guests, some multiple-time guests, Colin McTamany and my boy Jtorange. We are going to talk about our pre-NFL draft, mock draft, and how that went, how accurate we were. And after that, we'll talk about some rookie drafts that went through if we have time. So let's get to the show.
McGlynn is in. I repeat, McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. This is the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with your host, John McGlynn.
Was that Herms?
He got them guests on the Rolodex, stopping by to talk about some Dynasty Superflex. Everybody, yo, commish is in. It's time to sit down to listen to John McGlynn. Yo, who we trading, who we fading, who we getting off the squad. Knowledge never overrated, playing for number one. Hey, yo, McGlynn is in. It's time to let the fun begin. It's the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with John McGlynn.
Yo, we just started the show. And Jamie Parag is already here saying, my guys, yo, dudes, what's up? Live show, Jamie. I hope you could comment on some of our debacles that went down in our mock draft that we completely thought we nailed. We're like, man, this is the best draft ever. This is going to be the best draft in the history of drafts. So, but we have proof. And as they say in Charlie Brown, the proof of the pudding is in the crust. And here it is. This is the crust right here. The round one mock draft shown on my screen. So we're going to talk about the draft that happened and the draft that was. So we're going to start with the odds being, I think Colin, your odds, right? And JT, your evens. So I think that's what we talked about.
It doesn't matter too much.
We could just
we'll just talk about each individual pick. So, all right, that's fine. So in the NFL draft itself, pick number 1, Tennessee Titans, they went with Cam Ward. And guess who we guessed?
Nailed it.
Cam Ward.
If we stopped right there, we would have been perfect.
100%. We got it right. All the videos of him taking football seriously and the preseason and all the things. It's been a minute since everybody kind of knew Cam Ward was B101. They didn't invite nobody to the Titans facility. They kind of knew what was going on there. So Cam Ward was true. Number 2, most of our mock drafts had not involved any kind of trades. So it was just kind of, it's not, you could go forever and speculate, oh, this guy, they're going to trade up or next year's pick and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, like, it's very hard to pick trades or think about trades. It's very time consuming on shows to even talk about trades. It's time consuming me talking about trades right now. But so we got the player right, but we got the team wrong. What do you guys think about Travis Hunter? Because he probably was maybe the best player in this entire draft, quarterbacks even considered. But what do you think about my boy Trevor Lawrence moving up to number 2 to get Travis Hunter to be the second receiver on this team? JT, what do you think?
I've talked about it ad nauseum. I love Travis Hunter. I think he's going to be special. I think he was the best player in this draft. Did they give up a lot to move up and get him, the Jags? Yes. But you're also the Jags. You got to do something. You got to do something to stay relevant, be relevant. At this point, you have to realize, like, okay, how much longer do we have of Trevor Lawrence, and how much longer are we going to go just wasting away with Trevor Lawrence? We got to do something. BTJ showed out last year, gave you life. I would say just his performance alone at the end of the year was like, okay, maybe they won't be awful forever just because he was so good. So you're like, okay, let's jump on this. Let's ride this wave of positivity with him. Let's go get the best player in this draft. Travis Hunter is not from Jacksonville, but he's from Georgia, which is just a little north of there by a couple hours. Getting a guy that's a legend from that area, a guy that won the Heisman. To me, it was a right move, especially I know he's a young GM and everybody kind of ripped him and said, oh, man, you gave up way too much to move up for a bad team. I think it was the right move. I think Hunter's going to be great. He's going to make them relevant, at least. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody's talking about the Jags, and now it's like, oh, people are going to pay attention to what's happening with the Jags. I love it for Trevor Lawrence for fantasy. Now he's got 2 legit weapons in BTJ and Hunter. I think it's the right move. I loved it. Plus, I hate to say it, Jamie. I see he's already ripping my Steelers in the comments. I did not want to see him in Cleveland, man. I absolutely did not want to see Travis Hunter in Cleveland. So I'd much rather see him in Jacksonville. And now I get to go see him when they play the Colts every year. So I'm kind of pumped about that.
You're on mute, John.
Jamie, thanks. Jamie says, as long as you get the player right for Mox, the team shouldn't matter. That's kind of like saying like size doesn't matter, that kind of. So we appreciate the compliments there, Jamie. Much appreciated. Yes. So
we're in the realm on most of these picks.
Yeah, we are.
There's a couple of these that were way off, but to be honest, there's a lot of these we were like either the right team or within like
at the right position.
We were in the right spots for a lot of these guys. So
I will say with the Travis Hunter pick, the fact that the news or the rumors didn't really leak out until an hour, 2 hours before the draft started, just goes to show you what's going on in Jacksonville. Trent Baalke would never make this move. If he did, he probably would have given up more than maybe what James Gladstone did to move up. So the fact that, this 34-year-old GM comes in there, keeps his plans, close to the chest, and then ultimately executes and gets a guy that they're going to use a ton on offense, but probably mix in on defense too, is really encouraging for a franchise that has been pretty pitiful for almost their entire existence, other than maybe one season.
I gotta agree with by the way, Colin right there about Baalke. If he's still there, this is a disaster. So fantastic move. They finally got rid of him, and maybe this team heads in the right direction for once.
By the way, Colin, right? Yes. So as Jamie had also said a minute ago that Travis Hunter fell all the way down to 102 in IDP offensive draft. What a value! So everybody, I think it's rumor has been talking.
Hey, 102 and said I've already got him 101 in a couple IDP drafts, so I think he's gonna be awesome for IDP purposes. He's gonna actually crush on that format.
Well, what do you guys think in non-IDP? Just, I don't want to call it normal fantasy football because I don't think there is such a thing anymore. But Travis Hunter does play defense. I don't think there's going to be a way for him to get the points for maybe an interception. But if he returns an interception for a touchdown, he should get the 6, right?
You'd be surprised how many people commissioners that I'm on online leagues with that had just like, when you're on Sleeper, I'm not sure how many of you guys play Sleeper or MFL, whatever. When you're on Sleeper and any rules change, it comes on the message board as like, this has changed to 0. People change the rules because they have pick 101 or 102. They change the rules to 6-point defensive touchdown. It was never in the rules before. Like, oh, we just added it. We just added it. Bullshit. Like that's something. Everything's got to be voted on a special scoring. You don't just add, because you're going to get Travis Hunter on your team now. Like I'm like, get out of here, man. It's. I mean, it's not as bad as I've seen people cheat before in some of the leagues I've played in, especially like like neighborhood leagues where it's all amateurs just kind of trying to do stuff or pull the wool over people's eyes. Especially back in ESPN when you never saw when people were changing anything. Sleeper kind of tells on you now, which is very nice, but you can't just change scoring rules in the middle of a season or in the off season because that this is maybe a change. I'm okay with change. That's what voting is for as a commissioner. But it's gotta win, at least 50%. Most of my rules of scoring are 70% because of the fact that it impacts the league so much when you change scoring. But I can't believe that stuff like that still goes on where people just change stuff behind everybody's back. It's ridiculous. So
I'm in 4 or 5 drafts I've got going. Even if they're not done, I'm in like the 4th round on a lot of them. Hunter's been going anywhere. IDP's been going 101 or 102. Just like a super flex league PPR. He's been going, I've been seeing him anywhere from 102 to 105. Typically. So he's typically been wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. So I've seen most of my drafts, he's been the first wide out off the board, but 1 or 2, Tyrone McMillan went right before him, and then he went right after him. But it's basically been the top 5 has been in all my leagues. JT, Hampton, Ward, McMillan, Hunter, pretty much across the board. I've had one or two where Tet falls a spot or two because someone takes another running back, and usually that's somebody either just grabs Judkins or they grab Travion Henderson. But that's basically, I've been seeing those guys all in the top 5, top 6 pretty consistently across the board. Now, the end of the first round has been way different in every league, but that top 5, 6 has been pretty consistently all those guys.
Yeah, that's this league I was talking about now, which scoring is going to debate or determine what goes where. So like we had Genty and then Ward and then Tet and then Travis went number 4. So that's a full PPR, non-tight end premium, super flex. Obviously, in a 1 quarterback league, Tet would be Hunter would probably be number 3 or number 2 because Cam Ward would not be going number 2 in a 1 quarterback league. So that being said, pick 103, as Jamie says, doesn't matter if we got it right. It's the players, not the teams that matter. So Abdul Carter to the Giants, but hey,
player and team, bam,
player and team. We are 66%. We're 100% from the field on these top 3 picks, but teams are we're 66%. So
I blew it. Will Campbell was the smart pick. I went Membu. I'm a Mizzou guy. I thought Membu gave him a little bit more flexibility, but they went Campbell. We knew they were going to go O-line for pretty sure. So it was a coin toss between Campbell and Membu, and I went Membu just to be different. And I had Membu under 6 in my draft bet. So I was trying to manifest Membu in the top 5 there.
That was very selfish. Yeah,
I know that was my bad. I blew it for the draft. Sorry, guys.
I actually remember saying though, when I chose for the Raiders here, I thought Will Campbell was going to be the 4th pick and I was going to take Membu. So quick little swap there. No harm, no foul.
No harm, no foul. I just, in my head, the last 2 months, I envisioned Travis Hunter being in a Patriots uniform. He just felt like something we've seen on a Patriots team for the last decade or so, just he fits the persona so much. So not that he doesn't, it's going to be weird kind of even him trying his helmet on the press conference and kind of like it being all wonky and not fitting right. And, kind of looking like a nerd with his, it was just it's a funny visual compared to what I had in my head. But Membu was number 4 to the Patriots. And then, this was not a very sexy draft class as far as like non-IDP, just regular fantasy football players are concerned. So there's not really too much to get excited about.
John, we kind of talked about this coming in. Like this was a pretty defensive heavy class. So, and then last year, I don't know if we'll ever see a year like we did last year where like the first 14 guys were off the board and almost all of them were like, fantasy football relevant. So, I mean, that was just kind of a strange year how that happened. I knew that we were going to get a little bit of a course correction with some defensive guys, and it was. And we knew the first round was probably going to be a lot of defensive players, and then we were going to see a lot more fantasy relevant guys on like day 2, 3, and 4, or sorry, round 2, 3, and 4, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah. So Abdul Carter was correct. Number 4, the actual draft was New England Patriots select Will Campbell, and they took in our draft it was Armand Membu. Number 5, which was a switch. But in the actual draft, the Cleveland Browns took Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan. 5, we have Jalen Walker, outside linebacker from Georgia. So we figured it would be defense. It's a defensive player for our draft, but that is irrelevant for the team. What do you guys think about Jalen Walker?
He ended up going to the Falcons later on in the round. I like Jalen Walker a lot. I mean, obviously anybody out of Georgia the last couple of years has been phenomenal in the pros for the most part. I think he's good. He fell a little bit. A lot of people thought he was, gonna be top 10 somewhere. I know a lot of people had him mocked to Carolina at 8. So we thought he'd be somewhere in that range. Ended up dropping all the way down to the Falcons at 15.
Yeah.
But we knew the Falcons were going to go edge if anybody got there. I just didn't think I would have absolutely taken Walker to the Falcons if he was there, but I didn't think he would get that far. So I think the Falcons were pretty stoked that he got there to him at 15.
Yeah. A lot of people had thought of Jalen Walker as probably a top 5, 7 pick. So that he fell, it was a little bit surprising, but the next pick was not surprising, but all of us Bears fans were kind of crossing our fingers that he'd fall to number 10, but it was as Genty went to the Las Vegas Raiders. And It is what it is. You know, I don't think that the Raiders are in a position to take a running back right now, but they did it anyway just because they want to be flashy. Colin, is this the right pick for the Raiders?
You know, I had, you know, a misaligned my expectations and reality with the Raiders here. I think I said on our stream last week that Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, both Ohio State guys, will be available to them in the second round. And their offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, is now the offensive coordinator in Las Vegas. Very similarly last year, how a lot of people thought Jim Harbaugh, Michigan to the LA Chargers, would absolutely go get Blake Corum. Why wouldn't he? Well, he didn't. He actually waited and drafted Kamani Vidal later. Obviously, we saw Harbaugh invest in Amari Hampton this year, so extremely notable in that regard. But the Raiders grabbing Genty, you know, why not? It's fun. I do think they probably should have addressed the offensive line, but I will say he's going to be absolutely used beyond belief, I think, for fantasy football purposes. Behind him on the depth chart right now, I mean, his backup technically is Raheem Mostert, who's 33 years old, which is just hilarious that a guy's handcuff would be 33 years old for fantasy. You have Zamir White, Sincere McCormick, and Dylan Lobby. These guys just don't have the experience, don't have the ability to handle a full workload for a 17-game pace. We've seen Genty do it. He had nearly 400 touches last year at Boise State. So, you know, while I think they could have and should have invested in offensive line, grabbing Ashton Genty doesn't really hurt. It might hurt long-term, but for fantasy football purposes, this is probably the best pick in the entire first round.
Is this the rabbit in the hare situation where you're going to get Genty and he's going to get all the workload for a year or two and then get hurt because he just can't sustain 400 touches a season for his entire life?
It's tough to predict injuries. I think the way that he takes contact, it's hard to really say that, you know, oh, Ashton Genty's an injury waiting to happen. You know, the way we maybe looked at Todd Gurley with his knee, bone on bone coming out of college. I don't really see that with Genty. There was nothing during his career at college that led me to believe that, man, this guy's going to get hurt sooner than later. You know, if it happens, it's because it's a contact sport and he's playing running back. But, you know, you got to invest in the guy for the expected volume. You can't fade him because of an expected injury, because that just may never come. The volume will.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm real shocked that they did not take another running back in this draft. I really am. I thought they would take another guy in like the 5th or 6th round. There were so many players out, so many guys left. Even in undrafted free agents, there was some still real talented guys left. I'm surprised they didn't get anybody else. Like you said, Mostert back him up. So Sincere McCormick and Zamir White are like the other two guys that we saw them last year. Even though I do like Sincere a little bit, I was still surprised that they did not handcuff him a little bit more than that. But it is that's happens.
What it is. Number 7 was the New York Jets. We had said Armand Membu would be the pick.
I picked Tet McMillan. I thought they'd go off in somewhere. Membu already off the board, but Membu was actually who went to the Jets. I had said McMillan, who went one pick later to the Panthers.
Yes. So that's our aim was a little bit was pretty right as far as that's concerned. Our aim was right there, but we got the teams a little bit wrong. But so the talent we kind of saw.
I didn't quite get the Tet or even the Tyler Warren mocking to the Jets. I know that they need offensive playmakers, but the Jets need so much more. And Aaron Glenn, the new head coach who came from the Detroit Lions, obviously had a very loaded offense there. He was the defensive coordinator, but I think he really, really saw how much they could get done with a stout offensive line. That always kind of made sense to me as far as rebuilding this Jets team from the ground up. Protecting Justin Fields, giving him a chance to maybe sit in the pocket or even take off running. The fact that they didn't go after an offensive playmaker at pick 7 and then went for Mason Taylor in round 2, you can invest in Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren in the first round of your rookie dynasty drafts if you need a tight end. I would rather invest in running back, wide receiver, some better players at the position in better situations. Go get Mason Taylor later in your rookie drafts. I think he's going to have a really big role right away for the Jets.
I agree. I love Mason Taylor. That was what I wanted to see the Colts do. Actually, I wanted the Colts to go defense and then take Mason Taylor in the second round. I love Mason Taylor. Honestly, I took Tet because I thought that was a thing the Jets would do. The Jets actually made a wise decision, which I'm shocked about, to be honest with you. I'm going Membu first round and then Mason Taylor second round. Like Colin said, I feel the absolute right call for them. So I was just surprised they made that call.
Wise decisions, the Panthers. I'm not. I think everybody had visioned the Panthers taking somebody on defense, not Tet McMillan, which they did take. Wide receiver from Arizona. Did you? I think everybody had figured that the Cardinals were going to take the Panthers were going to take somebody on a defensive end or a defensive line, but they went with wide receiver. Colin, what do you think about that? Is that it's as far as if you have Bryce Young shares, or if you're looking at building the team with a wide receiver, they kind of nailed it on that one. But is that the right pick for the Panthers in their kind of rebuild, I guess?
Yeah, I think when you look at head coach Dave Canales' warpath, through the NFL, developing some quarterbacks, if you asked me maybe even 10 months ago, early in the 2024 season, are the Panthers going to have to reboot this thing and draft a quarterback in round 1 of 2025? I would have said yes. Bryce Young looked horrible at the beginning of last year, so much so that he got benched for Andy Dalton for a hot second. Obviously, towards the end of the season, we saw Bryce Young kind of get his confidence back, play a lot better, and what better way to continue on that path of progression than to give him an alpha wide receiver 1. They didn't get T. Higgins. Perhaps in a trade or in free agency. They didn't really invest in the position in free agency too much. They brought back Adam Thielen, but he'll be 35 soon. The Deontay Johnson experiment was a failure. I know they said before the draft that Xavier Legette, who they traded back into the first round last year to get, could be a DK Metcalf type player. That may be true for them, but they were kind of touting him as their top guy. I think drafting Tet McMillan kind of hurts Legette's value a little bit, but it absolutely increases Bryce Young. I think he could have a 30% target share out of the gate as a rookie. If there were any questions as to whether or not he should be the 102 or 103, depending on your league format, I think they were answered with this pick.
I traded Bryce Young away in a bunch of leagues like 107, 108 this offseason, figuring like, hey, he's overvalued. Does it make Bryce Young still if you were to trade away Bryce Young because he was like your 4th quarterback or something like that, where would you trade him for? Would you think you get a top 5 pick, a top 7 pop in a super flex dynasty? Where do you think where would you value Bryce Young? Say you were trading for Bryce Young, what would you pay for Bryce Young? I'll ask that question.
Yeah, I think that's more important. It's kind of from the perspective of the recipient. If you need a quarterback, I don't mind investing in Bryce Young. John, I know you and I made a trade. I got Sam Darnold from you because I was a little desperate at quarterback. I would much rather have a guy like Bryce Young, who has a clearer path to long-term success, perhaps in Carolina. He's a little bit more mobile, good coach there, than Sam Darnold, who could be out after a year or two in Seattle and looking for work again. So I think a first rounder is absolutely fine if you absolutely need a quarterback. I would have rather sought out Bryce Young before this draft. I think now that Tet McMillan is there, makes it a little bit tougher, but anyone that's asking for a top 5, top 6 pick, assuming that's where you're drafting because you need a quarterback, maybe your team is bad and you have a high draft pick, I don't think I would give away that pick for Bryce Young. But I don't really I'm not a huge college football guy. I'm not like grinding the tape, watching every college game. But from what I hear and from what I've looked into from a fantasy perspective, the 2026 draft class isn't great for fantasy football, generally speaking. So if you want to trade your 2026 first, get Bryce Young, maybe you're more successful and that pick decreases in value. Maybe that's what you look at.
That's what you did. You traded me a 26 first and a 25 second, I think. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Very good. All right. So the next pick was the New Orleans Saints. And we had figured that, say, go with some guy like Calvin Banks, offensive tackle. First, we thought maybe this might be the first spot for Shedeur. That was in our discussion. Like, all right, they need a quarterback. What are we going to do? They taking Shedeur Sanders. And then we decided, you know what? It's probably a better long-term solution for them just to take an offensive lineman. And we took Calvin Banks. And what did they do? They took Calvin Banks. We nailed it again, guys. We are like, we should be
Damn.
draft analysts. This is great.
This was great for everybody except that baby that was on the couch in Kelvin Beggs' house.
Oh man,
that baby went through it. Way past the baby's bedtime. People were rubbing its head.
Everybody was moving.
Everyone's so happy.
Everybody starts cheering and shaking. The baby's just like, bleh.
Baby's not going to remember that moment, but we're all going to remember that baby.
Yeah. People will tell the baby about that story the rest of its life.
Oh yeah.
About how it puked on national TV.
Maybe the baby will get drafted in a couple years and they'll replay that video.
There you
that'd
go.
Be great.
There you go. That would actually be hilarious.
That'd be great. Pick number 10, the Bears themselves. Well, we had said we asked Genty would fall here. He didn't fall, so that we have no choice on that one. But they did go offense. They picked a tight end, Colston Loveland from Michigan. I've had other drafts where Colston Loveland was slotted in this pick, so not a huge surprise that he went here. But at the same time, Bears fans were absolutely, this bullshit, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Colin, what do you think about Colston Loveland to the Bears here? I mean, they have Cole Kmet. They have 1,000, now they have a ton of receivers, but we were looking more of a Keenan Allen replacement for somewhere, but why Colston Loveland right now?
Yeah, I think they're going to run a lot of 12-man personnel, 2 tight end sets, Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. When they pick Colston Loveland, I think a lot of people, maybe non-Bears fans like myself, go Birds, maybe looked at this and said, wow, over Tyler Warren, that's crazy. I think Colston Loveland is actually a better all-around maybe pass catcher. I know Tyler Warren is just like a fantastic football player, just insane energy, insane aggression when he's out there. It almost seemed destined that he was going to go to the Colts, another pick that we nailed. But Colston Loveland, to me, was a good pick, I think, for Caleb Williams, who doesn't necessarily just sit back in the pocket. We didn't see it a ton last year and really let it fly. Colston Loveland can maybe get into the second level. Good pass catcher, keeps drives alive. I think it's really confusing, though, just from a big picture for the Bears, that they would go Luther Burden in the second round, because now you have Burden, you have Loveland, you have Kmet, you have DJ Moore, you have Roma Dunze, the first round pick last year. It kind of looks like Ben Johnson just stepped in the building and said, I'm going to do what I'm going to do on offense, and we'll figure it out from there. So I don't know. I'm a little worried that all of these guys there dilute each other's value a little bit for fantasy football. The biggest beneficiary here is probably Caleb Williams, the focal point, the guy getting the ball to all these players. He also has mobility in his own right. So Caleb Williams, all of a sudden, to me, all those people that have those negative tweets about him last year should probably delete them. I think he's going to have a huge second year. The Bears have never had a quarterback throw for 30 passing touchdowns in a season, never had a quarterback throw for 4,000 yards in a season. There's reason to believe Ben Johnson, with all of these weapons at Caleb Williams' disposal, can get him there. He did with Goff. Goff, if you look at his numbers since Ben Johnson was there on the Lions, his numbers increased every year, the more weapons they got. So I really love this for Caleb Williams. It's bad for Cole Kmet, but we'll see. There's an odd man out here. I'm not sure who it is yet. It might be DJ Moore. I'm not really sure.
John, I actually love this pick. If you're hiring Ben Johnson, you've waited around. He could have got other jobs. The Bears waited. They took him. There's no way that conversation wasn't like, we're going to do everything we can to give you the offense you want to be successful. I mean, he's an offensive coach. The whole reason you hired him is so he can basically replicate the Lions offense for the Bears. That's exactly why they hired him. You got to give him every opportunity. You just did all these moves. You jacked everything up for years, and you lucked into Caleb Williams on the smart trade back the year before. You have to invest everything right now to make sure he's successful and your offense is good. It might be a little overkill, but to me, I'd rather see a team go overboard trying to give their number one QB, second-year player, everything you could possibly give them to make him successful, rather than go, well, we really could use a little more help on defense. I don't care, man. Just load up the offense, make this guy good, set up your new coach for success, a guy that you brought in specifically because he's an offensive mind. To me, I was all about it. I know a lot of people were like, what? Luther Burden? I love it. I've already got the Luther Burden jersey. on order for the season. I love them going to the Bears. To me, that was a take the best player available on the board pick. He was there. There's no reason not to take him. I love what they did. It is going to murky the waters for fantasy. I think all these guys will be relevant. The problem is it might cap how relevant these guys are. We might get a lot of wide receiver 3, low end wide receiver 2, low end tight end 2 performances from a lot of these guys, as opposed to them all being like top tier guys. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, if the Bears can break through that ceiling and actually have a old school Manning Colts type of offense, or even just what the Lions have done the last 2 years, that they can even almost resemble that, then I think they feel like they won and did their job.
Colin, you have JJ McCarthy and Jameson Williams on your team, and somebody sends you an offer for you to accept Caleb Williams for those 2 players. Which one are you keeping? The 2 players, or are you taking Caleb Williams?
Oh man, I'm probably still keeping McCarthy and Williams, just because I don't think the difference between McCarthy and Caleb Williams is Jameson Williams. I'd rather have the 2 players in that trade. You've just got me thinking, though, like the NFC North is just absolutely full of fantasy weapons on every team. I mean, every team is loaded. Even the Lions in this draft, after seeing what the Bears did, we're just like, all right, well, we're going to take our 2/3 next year, move up in the 3rd this year, and grab Isaac Tesla, just because there's a ton going on in this NFC North. I think there's still a ton of question marks too. JJ McCarthy himself is a question mark. I lean on the side of, I think he's going to be very good. He himself is surrounded with a lot of good pass catchers. I mean, Justin Jefferson, it kind of starts and ends there with the conversation, but you have Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones out of the backfield. So while Caleb Williams is loaded, I don't think he's proven enough to believe that I need him instead of JJ McCarthy while losing Jameson Williams in the process.
JJ McCarthy to me is just a game manager. I saw him in high school. I saw him in college. I saw him here. I just don't think that he's a gunslinger, game winner kind of player, that kind of deal. And Jameson Williams, they drafted Tesla, I think, possibly as a replacement for Jameson Williams. This is last year. So Jameson Williams is more of a special teams, kind of a gimmick gadget player kind of deal like that. Believe me, I love the talent, man. I think he's so good. I think they're using him wrong in Detroit. And he may go somewhere else and just stick it up my arse in a couple years, who knows. But I just figured, hey, this is the time to get a guy that's had a Ben Johnson offense that's going to throw a ton, that's going to dump a ton, run a ton, that kind of deal. So JJ McCarthy's really not a mover. So a little bit of everything across the board.
John, I was going to say the JJ McCarthy, he might end up being that. I think right now, if you have him and you don't believe him, now's the time to sell, because people are up on him, because we've seen back-to-back QBs be really fantasy relevant playing for the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell. I mean, he's kind of the quarterback whisperer right now, and they've got offensive weapons around him. So if you really don't believe in JJ McCarthy, I think now's the time to sell, because I think the hype is high and we haven't seen him yet. So maybe he ends up being better, but I think everybody's expectation is going to be really good because of the offense. And if JJ McCarthy was like sitting in the wings and going to start for the Browns this year, totally different story. I think you'd be like, everybody like, yeah, I'm not that excited. But the fact that he's on the Vikings with all the talent they have and the coaching staff they have, I think is what pushes people to think that he's going to be fantasy relevant, because the last couple guys, and listen, me and you love Sam Darnold. We've talked about it a ton of times. We just said, hey, he just needs a chance on a decent team and he'll be pretty good. Well, we saw it. He was pretty good on with a competent team around him. And I think JJ McCarthy is easily as good as Sam Darnold. And I think the Vikings think better. So obviously by moving Sam Darnold and keeping him. So I've got pretty decent expectations on JJ McCarthy. I think he can be pretty good. Real life, but also for fantasy.
And if you don't believe in him, go get Sam Howell for cheap, because the Vikings traded for him and he's now the backup to JJ McCarthy.
I have so much Sam Howell. It's insane. I just keep going Sam Howell to this team, to that team. I just keep holding him, and I'm like, maybe he'll start. Now he's I have him. Now he's the backup for this guy I already have on my team. It's like,
so you're telling me there's a chance.
Like me and JT already don't have every share of Sam Howell in every league we're in across the board.
Like me and John have so much Sam Howell and Sam Darnold, it's insane.
It's ridiculous. Yes. So, all right. The next pick was the 49ers. We had picked Mykel Williams, edge from Georgia, to go to the 49ers. And in the actual NFL draft, guys, another one, chalking on the board. San Francisco 49ers selected Mykel Williams, defensive end from Georgia, with with their pick. So it is what it is.
We got this right?
We got it right. Yes,
we're all over this.
Oh, wow. I really didn't pay attention, I guess, that much to.
Yeah, I thought Mykel Williams was going to go to the Niners. They went defense heavy in this draft. They went defense. It was really weird. The only pick they went offense was the 4th round, taking Watson out of Ole Miss, who kind of was like a late bloomer when Trey Harris got hurt. He didn't do a ton until he got hurt. It's a little bit surprising pick with all the guys that were still on the board there for them. But I thought they would go edge. They needed somebody to play outside the opposite side of Bosa. Williams was a guy, a little bit of ankle injury, banged up, didn't play 100%. If he is 100%, this could be a steal. I mean, he's an absolute freaking wrecker on the edge. Huge dude. Just a perfect guy to put up opposite side of Bosa.
At number 12, our Dallas Cowboys. We had selected Omarion Hampton, running back North Carolina, to fill the need of a running back in Dallas. Well, Dallas Cowboys said, you know what, let's go to guard. They took Tyler Booker from Alabama. So
we should have known. Everything said they should go running back, and you absolutely knew they wouldn't. Just to piss fantasy people off.
I just don't get it. I really don't care. I mean, I do like Tyler Booker. Seems like a good dude going to my least favorite team in the NFL, but that's besides the point. I just don't take Jerry Jones seriously anymore when it comes to this offense. They need a wide receiver too. Didn't address it. They need a running back. Yeah, they got Jaden Blue. He's not a 3-down workhorse back, to my knowledge. I mean, I don't see that for him. So they're really going to ride with Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders. I don't get it. You got Dak Prescott coming back from a serious injury, and yeah, I get protecting him up front and building the line. But as far as playmakers go, it's CeeDee Lamb and a couple of guys.
It's amazing you paid Dak and then turned around and just said, "Hey, we're going to pay you after all this time, but we're not going to give you any. We're not going to give you anyone on offense. Like, good luck. You forced us into paying you, and now we're going to give you no one. It just doesn't make any sense. It's
find me another team
punishing
that's
him
doing
on
that.
purpose or something. It's like it doesn't make any sense. It's like Jerry Jones punishing him for like forcing him into this, and it's like, dude, you're just hurting yourself. What are you doing? It doesn't make any sense to me.
But then they'll trade a 4th for Jonathan Mingo. Okay. Do what you gotta
Again,
do.
this is what I'm talking about. It's almost like Jerry Jones is like, I'm on my way out at some point here, people. I'm not going to live forever, and I'm just going to make everyone that pissed me off at the end of this just suffer just because. It's like, it seems like the craziest thing. I don't know what's going on in Dallas. I'm not a Dallas fan at all, and if you are a Dallas fan, you have to be just absolutely beside yourself. Like, what is absolutely going on in this franchise? I mean, it's been a disaster for almost 20 years now. I mean, it's been brutal.
I mean, I think every other NFC East team had a better draft than them.
Yeah.
So
they had one of the worst drafts again.
They're in jeopardy of, sitting at 4th in that division if they're not careful in a couple years. So we'll see.
At number 13, the Miami Dolphins. For our draft, we took Malachi Stark, safety from Georgia. The Dolphins also had defense on their mind, but they got Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle from Michigan. I think everybody across the board loves Kenneth Grant. He's just a stud. So any comments on this one? Because the Dolphins need a lot.
I took Starks here. Their secondary needed a lot of help. Question was where they went there, or where they go Grant. I saw Grant all over the board. 13, this is by far the highest I saw anyone taking him. So I was a little shocked that he went right there. I thought they would definitely take a defensive player. Just wasn't sure what direction they would go. If they're healthy on the outside edges, they've got a ton of edge players, but they've just all been hurt the last couple of years. So I didn't think they would necessarily go edge, but their secondary just absolutely was obliterated with free agency and everything else. I thought they'd go secondary, but I think it's a good pick. Kenneth Grant, you need somebody up the middle. You got to stop the run. I knew it was going to be defense, so Kenneth Grant wasn't surprising to me there.
Yeah. Next pick. We had figured the Colts were just a shoe-in because they take probably 3 tight ends every draft every year, Well, they took
and
Tyler
they still
Warren from
didn't
Penn
have any
State.
that could be were any good, even though they had 7 on the team.
We had figured that they were going to take Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. And again, we got another one right. Indianapolis Colts, Tyler Warren. A+ grade here for us. Give him that much. We knew that was going to come. But JT, resident Colts fan, what do you think about this pick? There's not much to say. It's nailed it, right?
Everybody it was one of those things that, I was pushing hard for them to get Bowers last year. There's word that they tried to move up and get him, and it just didn't work, as he ended up going higher than a few people thought. Warren isn't Bowers. We've had this conversation before. I just do like Warren, though. I know some people are like, oh, man, he's just another player that no quarterback can get him the ball, and people are upset about it for fantasy purposes. I like it. They need, again, and I'm going to say this over and over and over again, if you have a young quarterback, you have to do everything in your power to give him as many weapons as possible to try to make him successful. You just can't leave these guys hanging. You got to figure it out. Here's the thing is, if Anthony Richardson isn't the answer this year, they got Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones isn't the answer, you go get somebody next year. But here's what helps. If you go get a young QB next year, if you're out on both those guys, now you've actually loaded them up with a really good offense that just needs a QB. How many teams have we seen where they draft a QB, but they don't have anybody else anyway? So it's like, how successful can this guy be? So at least to me, they're loading him up all around. And so if the quarterback can't get it done this year, at least you've set yourself up where your offense should literally be set. You just need a QB. Now you go sign a guy on a free agency, you draft a guy. So I like the move. If you watch the Colts last year, their tight ends were awful. Nothing against Kylan Granson as a person, and Drew Ogletree, nice guy. I've met him. They just weren't good. The whole unit was bad. None of the guys performed. Ton of drops. None of them could get open. They didn't do anything. They either were blockers or they were dropping passes. So they absolutely had to have a tight end. It was kind of a dead spot on their offense. To me, it's rare that you see a pick that everyone thinks is going to happen, and it actually happens. So I think, he's been getting mocked to the Colts for since basically the mock draft started and everyone started talking about the draft. Basically, since the season ended, everybody's been talking Tyler Warren go to the Colts at 14, so it actually happened.
Colin, are you worried that Tyler Warren only has 1 year of actual production in college, and what's going to happen to the NFL? Is this did they just grab the shiny new toy, but even though he doesn't have an established college background?
Not so much. I'm a little bit more worried just about the quarterback position. Anthony Richardson has yet to eclipse 400 total passing attempts in the NFL. So if
I don't get it, you guys, they got Riley Leonard. It's solved. Notre Dame is there.
John,
over.
when that Riley Leonard pick happened, I was like,
yes,
God, it was like the most oh my God, I should have seen that coming a mile away. Why hadn't I thought about it? It's like the most Colts pick of all time. It's let's take another guy that can run, that's super questionable throwing the ball, but he's from Notre Dame. They always love to take a local guy.
Irish.
I was like, this is the perfect practice squad QB and third stringer for the Colts is Riley Leonard, which is crazy because we were talking about Riley Leonard possibly being a top 10 or 15 pick 2 years ago. So it's kind of wild how these things work out, and which is we always got to be questioned when we're talking about these quarterbacks when they're in college about coming out. We've seen a lot of guys that we thought were going to be first rounders that just poof. They ended up being undrafted or going 5th, 6th round. So we saw it a lot in this draft of guys that everybody thought were going to be studs that nobody wanted. So I'm kind of crazy.
JT Carr is on the way up, buddy. I can't wait for that to happen.
We'll see.
What do you mean we'll see? Notre Dame championship Irish.
Notre Dame should be good. Jeremiah Love is freaking awesome.
He is.
Number 1 running back in the country. So, if they get that passing game going, be nice.
All right. So number 15, we had picked Shamar Starr to the Falcons. He's an edge from Texas A&M. The Falcons took outside linebacker, defensive end, Jalen Walker from Georgia. So we were on the right track, just wrong player, So
if Jalen Walker would have got there, I would have said absolutely 100% he's going to the Falcons at 15. I just didn't think he would get there. So basically the next best edge was Stewart, so we were right there. So it was like it was Jalen Walker or Stewart, because Stewart was the next best edge on the board. So again, we were right in the realm, and then Stewart goes 2 picks later. So
yeah, did Stewart go to the Bengals?
He ended up going to the Bengals at 17. So we were right in the same spot. We basically had the DNs in order of when they were going to go. They just one of them didn't go as early. So
the Falcons, we had Stewart there. The Bengals drafted Stewart, and then the Falcons came back into the draft to draft James Pierce,
who we had to go to the Bengals. So we were on track on all those guys.
I'm going to give us an A+ for that one.
I actually agree. I think we were all right in that.
To the end, the first half of the draft, we had picked this Arizona Cardinals to take Jahdae Barron, cornerback from Texas. They actually took Walter Newell, a defensive tackle from Ole Miss. I'm not really sure that's a.
This is the same spot where like Starks or Grant for Miami. We knew they were going defense. They needed defense bad. The question was, were they going to go DB or were they going to go D line? Again, they've invested in some edges. So the question was, do you go DB, go D line? Both Miami and Arizona decided, hey, we'd rather go with the defensive tackles first. They felt those guys loaded defensive tackle class. They felt like, hey, let's take the second and third best guys behind Mason Graham. So that made sense to me that they went Walter Nolan. I figured it was going to be in that range, either D tackle or DB. And then Jahdae Barron, we took at 16, goes 4 picks later. So
17, the second half, starting the second half of the draft, we got the Cincinnati Bengal, or we had picked James Pierce, we just talked about a second ago, edge from Tennessee. The actual Bengals took Shamar Stewart, defensive end from Texas A&M. So same chamber, you know, that's we just talked about.
We were right on board there.
18, we had picked Greg Zabel, offensive lineman from North Dakota State.
I saw somebody say Gray Zabel sounds like a paint color. I was like, that's actually pretty funny. It does sound like a paint color.
Yeah.
But we were on that 18. Bam, nailed it.
Boom. So hold on,
I know. I feel like if JT didn't draft Membo at 4,
God, we would have been. I totally butchered us with that.
At 6, I had all the offensive line picks. I would have had Membu, Banks, and then Gray Zabel, and I could have made a lot of money. But you messed. I
messed us up with the old Campbell pick, or with the Membu pick at 4. That is for sure.
I'll never recover.
Really, the Membu pick at 4 and the Jalen Walker pick at 5 are the only two those are the two that have actually really kind of thrown off our other picks. Because other than that, we were pretty right on a lot of these.
We'll talk about being thrown off. We're talking about now we have 19.
Oh, this was the one pick that came out of nowhere. I don't think we felt like I had no idea this was going to happen.
Everybody had a defensive end, outside linebacker kind of prototype going to the Buccaneers. They took in our draft, we had Jahad Campbell, outside linebacker from Alabama. In reality, they said, hey, we just signed Chris Godwin for this massive amount of money. We already have everything else taken care of. Let's get Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State. JT, you've heard me say this multiple times before. I did not think that Tampa Bay was going to re-sign Chris Godwin, and this would be my perfect one-for-one replacement for Chris Godwin in this system. But now they have 2 Chris Godwins to play the same position in the same offense. What is the problem? What's the deal here?
If I'm a Chris Godwin fan or owner, I'm a little worried. To me, this tells me they're not 100% sure he's like going to come back and be fully healthy. To me, you hate to say it's insurance. You don't want to do insurance in the first round. But you got to keep the reason the Bucs are in it and have a chance to make the playoffs every year is because Baker is just slinging right now. He is just slinging for fantasy purposes. So if you got Baker, you got to love this. Injuries happen. We saw Mike Evans got banged up last year. I tell you what, Mike Evans and Godwin, if you go back, this seems like a crazy pick until you go back and realize at one point, all the players that the Bucs were starting at wide receiver because of injuries, it got ugly. It got real ugly, and it cost them some games. So if you go back and look at that and you go, hey, this might seem like a crazy pick because where's he fit with all these other guys? Well, dude, they were starting Sterling Shepard and throwing him the ball a ton last year. I mean, come on, Sterling Shepard is pretty old at this point. And they were filling some other guys in there. Palmer. I mean, to me, this makes sense because of the injuries and the things that have happened. Now, is Mike Evans still good? Yes, but Mike Evans got hurt last year. He missed some games. You know, Godwin injury was pretty brutal. Is he going to be ready for the start of the season? I don't know. Jalen McMillan was one of my favorite sleeper picks last year, but Mekabuka, I'm sorry, is a lot better than Jalen McMillan. I mean, a lot better. So to me, while this seems like, oh, why would you do that with all the guys you have? Watching them play last year with the injuries to wide receivers, I just think they said, we can't do that again. If we spent all this money on Baker Mayfield, and the only way we're making the playoffs is that our offense is absolutely playing top notch. To me, that makes this now if I break it down that way, it makes more sense. They're covering themselves, and not only they're covering themselves, they got legitimately most people's third ranked wide receiver in this class. So it makes more sense once you kind of talk it through.
Say you're a dynasty owner, okay, and you have Jalen McMillan on your team, and Godwin's not ready to start. Godwin's not ready to start the season, or he's not 100% ready yet. Ibuka starts in the slot, they start killing it, and then McMillan is just racking up points. Do you sell him right away before Godwin comes back, or is that someone you're just holding for a while? Because I mean, let's say somebody offers you a third from McMillan. Are you taking that because he's not the future of the team, or what do you think about that? Colin, I'll ask you that first.
Yeah, I think if McMillan shows any sign of success early on this season, I would move him if someone comes asking. I don't know if I would be shopping him because the optics of that look pretty bad. Hey, look how good this guy's doing. Do you want him? Well, why would you be trading him if he's doing so well? So if someone does reach out and say, hey, what's your asking price for McMillan? You know, I'd come up with some sort of price depending on what the manager who's asking has. I will say Mike Evans is in the final year of his deal. Chris Godwin signed a 3-year deal, I believe, but it's really a 2-year deal. So there could be a ton of turnover here very quickly. Will they bring back Baker Mayfield for longer? I know he just signed a 3-year deal, I think, last year. So they have some things they have to figure out long-term. From what I understand, based on post-draft press conferences and interviews, they just really, really liked Ibuka, and just to have him in the building, have him on their offense meant a lot. So, you know, good teams draft good players kind of thing. I don't really know if they drafted for need or if they just went with best player available and he was it.
Yeah. All right. So after that, we had at 20, we had the Denver Broncos taking Colson Loveland, tight end from Michigan, because my boy, long hair freak, did not pan out at tight end last couple of years. So
you loved
Greg
him.
Dulcich, my guy, where are you? Go somewhere else and be awesome. Go free, young bird. But in reality, they took Jahdae Barron from Texas. So great pick.
I think there's a good chance if Loveland would have been here, they would have taken him. I really do. I think they changed course when he was gone. But if he would have got there, I still think if Loveland was there at 20 or 22 for the Broncos or the Chargers, I think he goes there. I think the fact that he was off the board, they went a different direction. But I think Colson Loveland would have been the pick. Jahdae Barron, I think, yeah, I took him at 16, but he drops to 20 here. He was one of my favorite risers. You know, he was the Walter Camp Defensive Back of the Year award. The guy was just a beast. If you looked at his targeted QB rating when he was playing man last year, it was insanely low. I mean, guys have said, if I'm the Broncos, how did we go from being terrible to being in the playoff picture? It's because our defense was freaking awesome. Their defense was great. Why not add on to it? Jahdae Barron to me is Brian Branch. I think he's that type of player. He can play outside. He can play your nickel slot. He can play your box safety. I think he slots in as the nickel slot on this team because they got Riley Moss on the outside. They got Surtain on the outside. Brandon Jones, really nice year last year at safety. Jaquan McMillan might be the guy out because he was the guy that was playing that nickel last year. They've signed Tolano Hufanga from the Niners, who's been injured. He should be their box safety, but if he doesn't kind of bounce back fully like they expect, I think you could see Barron moving over there and then McMillan coming back in. I actually, for a sec, this legit, if Hufanga comes back and as good as he was before the injury for the Niners, this might be up there with, I think, I think you could say they're the best secondary in the league, maybe second best secondary to the Eagles. I mean, I think really both those units are just top notch across the board at all 5 positions.
You remember when the Broncos made the playoffs last year and they started out the game with a Bo Nix to Troy Franklin, like crazy ass flea flicker touchdown. We're like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy. And then they just got rolled like 44-7.
I immediately jumped on the live bet going the other way. That was like the best thing that could happen. I was like, oh yes. I was like, Broncos go first. Yes, Dad, jump on the live bet, go the other way. It was great.
Oh, absolutely. People won a lot of money in that, thinking, oh my God.
Yeah.
So after the Broncos, we had at 21.
Just stabbing me in the heart.
I'm going to let Colin talk about this first because
thank you. Yeah, just
go
give
for
me
4
a
hours
second.
if I let you. I think JT picked Shedeur Sanders here. I think that was the pick. Colorado stop his what was presumably at this point in time too long of a slide for him to fall in the first round. They decided they're going to go. In reality, they went Derek Harmon, defensive tackle from Oregon. Kyle, what do you think about this pick?
I actually tweeted today. It's May 1st, and the Steelers quarterback room is Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Skylar Thompson.
Super Bowl, baby.
I don't necessarily know if Shedeur Sanders should have been the pick here, Jackson Dart, whoever you want to slide in. I just don't understand what the plan is. If plan A is Aaron Rodgers and that doesn't pan out, what is plan B? Because if it's to draft a quarterback, well, that happened. They got Will Howard. That if that is really plan B, so be it. It's starting to feel like this all blew up in their face.
Yeah.
If they don't get Aaron Rodgers, I guess. If they get Aaron Rodgers, so be it. But they let Russell Wilson and Justin Fields go, even though they said they wanted to bring one of them back, I think. Aaron Rodgers is mulling over retirement or joining the Steelers. Like, what more do they have to do to prove to him that they're ready for him to come in there? But he's 41 years old. Like, how well is that going to go? So, I think Derek Harmon is a great pick. TJ Watt's getting older. They could use someone to on the defensive line just in general. But the quarterback thing is just very confusing to me. You went out and traded your second round pick for DK Metcalf, immediately signed him to a massive extension. There were rumors you were going to trade George Pickens. That didn't happen. So you've got all these pieces on offense. You have a good defense. You're a consistent playoff team, and you're missing the biggest position to get you to the playoffs, and that's quarterback. If they think it's Mason Rudolph, so be it. I'll watch, but there just seems like there's going to be a lot of I told you so's going on this season.
The 7-year plan of taking Mason Rudolph 7 years ago in the third round is finally paying off.
Not wrong, just early. Correct.
Yeah, exactly. I will say I think they botched this, and I don't think they're ever going to be honest that they absolutely this quarterback thing blew up in their face. I don't think they thought it was going to go this way at all. I think they botched Fields from the beginning. They didn't think it was going to go. They thought Fields was just going to be like, well, thanks for trading for me and semi-believing in me and let me start a couple games and I'll just come back for cheap. I think right there they blew that. And when that went down, I think they just started scrambling, going like, well, shit, that's what our plan was. Now we don't know what we're going to do. Now, I'm not going to get big into sure. I thought they should. The fact that they pass on him here, I won't fault them because Derek Harmon was the right pick. Derek Harmon's a beast. He's basically Cam Hayward, which, he's going to fit that Steelers defensive front, playing that defensive end, inside defensive end on a 3-4. He's perfect fit for this team. Great. The fact that they didn't take Sanders somewhere else in this draft, the fact that they had all the way to the 5th round to take a shot at him and they didn't, just absolutely blows my mind. That's all I'll say. I can't believe they didn't take a shot. Passing on him in the first, I can understand if they were a little hesitant, but not taking anyone till Will Howard in the 6th is really shocking to me. I just think they've blown this out.
I liked Will Howard's video at his house. Come on, Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And they finally call him. I mean, yeah, I'd want to go there too if you want to get an opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I tell you what, I don't know if I've ever. I don't know if we'll go back and look at this draft with all these QBs falling and go, no one ever gets a chance mostly outside of being a first round quarterback pick. You can sprinkle in some third rounders and some stuff that actually happened, but you never see outside of Tom Brady and Brock Purdy. Like literally, those are the only two guys
you need an injury
that have gone late that have got on, and both of them only played because the guys in front of them got hurt. They would have never got a shot if those guys wouldn't got hurt. So the crazy thing is that you go into camp and people are legitimately talking about Shadur Sanders in the 5th round and Will Howard in the 6th round as potential, like the front runners to get the starting job for both those jobs. That's wild to me. I mean, that's wild to me that those guys would go 5th, 6th round and people are talking about, hey man, they might actually be the best player for that team at quarterback. That to me is shocking.
Yeah, I'm not as down on Will Howard as the rest of the community is. So I'm actually glad that he got a shot somewhere that his quarterback needed, like Pittsburgh. So it made me happy to see him go there. You know, obviously he's happy for sure, but I don't think he's as bad as everybody makes him out to be. You know, I think he's the game manager, but you just want someone who doesn't turn the ball over. That's all you're asking for. Really, in the NFL, when you're a ground and pound team that plays good defense, you want someone who doesn't throw a ton of interceptions. You know, and that's I think Will Howard is kind of a pretty decent quarterback as far as
it'll be interesting to see. He was a lot better last year at Ohio State than he was at Kansas State. But obviously he had a lot better talent around him. So the question is, how does that translate? He seems like a really good kid. Watching his John Gruden QB room, whatever with him, looks like a smart kid, tough kid, emotional. Like I think he fits in with the Steelers type of people. The thing is, people that are like hating on Mason Rudolph, I kind of feel like they're a lot of the same player, and Mason Rudolph probably was slightly better than Will Howard in college. So if you hate Mason Rudolph, I'm like, it makes me a little bit worried about people who are like, I love Will Howard. I'm like, well, he's basically the same player as Mason Rudolph, but younger, I guess.
Yeah. Get off my boy. So number 22, the Chargers took Walter. We had said Walter Nolan to defensive line. The defensive lineman from Ole Miss was going to be our pick. They surprised a lot of people and took Amari Hampton, running back North Carolina. I was kind of surprised by this. I didn't think he was. I thought at this point in time he was going to fall a little bit, or Hampton was going to fall a little bit further. But hindsight being 2020, it's not a bad pick at all. So, Colin, what do you think about the Amari Hampton to the Chargers pick?
Yeah, I think if you have the 104 pick in a 1 QB rookie draft, you're very happy because you're going to get either Genty. Probably not Genty, but Genty, Hampton, McMillan, or Hunter at 104. The landing spots for Tet McMillan and Walter Nolan and Amari Hampton are both great. So really encouraged by it. I mean, the Najee Harris signing looked great when it happened. $5 million guaranteed, upwards to $9 million. So he could still have a decent role, but Najee Harris just doesn't have breakaway speed. He's a bruiser. That's great. This is going to be a run-heavy team, so he will get some run. Probably, I don't think he'll touch 200 carries unless Hampton gets hurt. But I do think Hampton's going to be the lead back here. He gets a 4-year, $17.7 million guaranteed, fully guaranteed rookie deal at this pick. So I think this is a great, great ad. So much better than J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and even Najee Harris. So I really like Hampton. He's definitely on my redraft radar. Najee Harris's value probably drops a little bit, but maybe he could be a good later round pick depending on where that is. This is just a team that the line's good, the scheme's good, the fit is good here. So I was really, really happy to see Harbaugh actually pull the trigger and push to get Hampton here.
I think it was a smart move. I think a lot of people thought they might go running back, and then when you saw the Najee signing, they're like, oh, well, if they do, they'll just take running back later. I'm glad they went up and got him. It hurts my Najee shares, and I love Najee, but this is a right move, man. Hampton's an absolute stud. This is a right place to take him. Like Colin said, a redraft. I don't play in a lot of redraft leagues, but the ones I do, he should be in the first couple rounds. Like, you should be seeing him come off the board. I think he's going to be a fairly decent player for redraft. Dynasty, I love him. I'm taking him in the top 4. I've got a couple leagues where it's like I need running back bad, and I'm like, oh, do I take Hampton or do I take Travis Hunter? I'm like debating between the two of them. Do I take the long term? Do I think Travis Hunter's going to be amazing, or do I take the short term that I really like Hampton? I need to RB. So I think Hampton, he's been pretty much consistently top 4 in almost every draft I've been in. So depending on where you're at with QBs, he's been going 102, 103, or 104 in basically every league I'm in. So I love the move. Plus, he goes from the fantastic light blue unis at North Carolina to the fantastic light blue unis for the Chargers. 2 of the best looks in football. So I'm down for that one. I think it's a great pick. I love her for fantasy purposes too.
I love that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I kind of think Najee Harris is a bust in the grand scheme of things as far as dynasty pick. When you drafted him, obviously he got all the receptions, but if you drafted Najee Harris, he was what, a pick 1, 2, or 3 in your rookie drafts way back when.
He was top 5 in almost every draft I was in.
So your team wasn't very good if you were drafting him, most likely. Had a great first year in PPR leagues, has kind of dropped off ever since. Now he's on a team where he might not even be the RB1. Big picture here. His 5 years, his best year was year 1. So
yeah, well, that is where for me, dynasty, that is the little bit of the rub for me, especially if I'm not on a competing team and on a little bit of a rebuild. I'm trying to decide, hey, if I'm a couple years out on this team, do I take a running back? Or do I take a wide receiver for the long term and then I go back and get a running back in a year or two when I actually can compete? So that's the big question for me. And that's, if I'm passing on Hampton, that's the reason why. If my team is, if I'm a running back away, I take Hampton. If I'm like, ooh, I got to build a little bit, then, at that point I'm like, do I take the wideout instead?
Yeah, I think Hampton's a little bit more safe than Najee was back then. I mean, I think as far as how deep that draft was, 2021, there were some other picks you could have taken, but Najee was kind of a clear guy to take up top. Hampton is here as well, but I think his 4 years with LA, maybe 5, if he gets that 5th year option, will be a lot more successful in fantasy football than Najee's were in Pittsburgh.
The fact that they have Harbaugh, the good coach, they have Herbert, the stud quarterback.
Right.
Really what killed Najee was the Big Ben fall off.
Yeah.
If they would have actually had 2 or 3 more good years of Big Ben, I think it changes things drastically for Najee.
Yeah.
But, as soon as Ben went out, it was like that crushed Najee because they couldn't watch anybody.
Less touchdowns.
Everybody just started pounding the line. He was getting hit behind the line constantly. They couldn't get him out of the backfield to get passes to him because it's not like he doesn't have good hands. The guy can catch. They just couldn't get him the ball at all. So I've got Najee in a ton of places, and he's basically a flex play, backup play, most likely, in bye weeks at this point.
I love that P2W has these subscriber leagues that he has, and somebody dropped out, or I'm not sure how he left, but he left an awesome team. And Nick put it up on Twitter, like, does anybody want this? I'm like, dude, I'll take that team. The only thing the team needed was running backs. He had the wide receiver room was absolutely insane. He had it was McBride and the tight ends were stacked. The quarterbacks were awesome. It's all he needed was running backs. So I traded for Bijan and I traded for Saquon. And this guy also had early picks. I got Genty and Amari and Hampton. My running back room is Bijan, Barkley, Hampton, and Genty now with a stacked offensive. The quarterbacks are great. The wide receivers are phenomenal. The tight ends are stacked. And I won last year. I'm going to go undefeated for the next 3 years with this team. It's going to be unbelievable.
John, I wish I had got some orphan teams that looked like that. Man, I've got some brutal ones I'm trying to work my way through right now.
Dude, it is absolutely wonderful. I'm not a big I don't know. We'll go over the team later. I'll show it to you, but holy cow, absolutely phenomenal. The next pick, we had picked the Green Bay Packers. We picked Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan. What actually happened was they took Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas. Is this going to be their number one wide receiver? Because Green Bay Packer Cheesehead Nation just thinks that they got Randy Moss at the first, in the first round here. Is Matthew Golden Randy Moss? Either one of you guys, what's going? I mean, is it this?
The silence is deafening. He's absolutely not Randy Moss. This was a confusing pick for me. I had a lot of, I'm not going to say better ideas because I'm not an NFL GM, but I had a
Your
lot of
ideas
other,
were better, Colin.
I had a lot
backing
of
you.
other creative ideas that the Packers could have added a legitimate wide receiver one this offseason. I would like to ask Josh Jacobs this question. He's the guy that was saying we need an alpha guy, which is kind of a bold thing to say on a podcast or an interview when your teammates will probably see that clip and did see that clip. But, you know, going with Golden, going with Savion Williams later is kind of a death sentence for both Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and probably Christian Watson. Christian Watson has 2 years left. This year is going to be mostly spent recovering from his knee injury. So Golden's going to be very involved. Don't get me wrong, but I would have liked to have seen him on a couple other teams. I think 12 for the Cowboys was too high, but maybe second round of the Cowboys. But when you flash, you know, speed in the 4.2s, it almost guarantees you're going to go in the first round, whether you deserve it or not.
Right.
I also don't like he's
speed,
wearing
right.
He's wearing number 22. The jersey number's horrible.
And I saw everybody complaining about that bitch.
It's hard for me to overlook.
They're like, oh no, he's going to be horrible now. Here's the thing is, if you wanted Matthew Golden to be the alpha, you just drafted a guy who's never been the alpha in his career in college. So I feel like I'm always hating on Matthew Golden. I don't actually hate Matthew Golden at all, but to me, this pick didn't make much sense. When he ran that 4.29, he went up everybody's board. I'm like, man, he's still wide receiver like 6 or 7 for me in my rankings.
And he probably will be in rookie drafts.
I think he will be
right.
too. Again, it's like, it seems strange that the one time the Packers finally go wide receiver, it's like you take the one guy that has like all the metrics say that he's not a breakout stud. All the metrics say he's like not a dominant receiver, but you just it feels like they just, to be honest with you, it feels like they just drafted Christian Watson again.
Yeah.
And and that's fine. If you have a healthy Christian Watson, that's fine. But at 23,
he does more than Christian Watson.
I think he does too. But at 23, I don't know, man. I felt a little early for me. There was a lot of guys in the second round that I thought were going to be there, wide receiver wise, second, third round. I'm just really surprised they didn't get. Obviously, Will Johnson here. We'll get out of the way so we're not talking. He ended up dropping way, way, way down. Ended up going like late second round to the Cardinals. Knee problems, injury issues for him. He was a guy that people say is a top 10 to 15 pick if he wasn't hurt. So he ended up dropping in the second round. So we missed out on that. But I think a lot of people missed on that. I don't know if I saw anyone that had Will Johnson not going in the first round. I think people had him dropping because of the injury, but not all the way out of the first round. This just to me was a very surprising pick here with Golden.
They hadn't drafted a wide receiver in the first round since 2002. The draft was in Green Bay. It almost felt like they were playing to the crowd a little bit.
Yeah, right.
I think so. And here's also and maybe you know I could totally be making this up, but you saw every other team with a young QB go after offensive weapons for their young QB. You know, are you the Packers sitting there and going, well, the Bears went offense. Look at the Panthers went offense for their quarterback. Oh, Colts went offense for their young quarterback. Are we going to be the only team that, you know, Baker Mayfield, Tampa went offense for their young quarterback. Are we going to be the only team with Jordan Love and not go offense for our young quarterback? Kind of felt like everybody's like, oh, everybody else is doing it. Maybe we should jump on board here too. Who knows how much that has a factor in it, but I think stuff like that has more of a factor on NFL GMs than people want to admit. When they see what other people are doing, I think sometimes it can skew you.
Do you think a lot of the NFL has tape on Jordan Love now, and they kind of figured out his deficiencies? And you know, you saw like his production was kind of.
I traded Jordan Love straight up. I got rid of him for Justin Herbert last year, and a pick, and I was ecstatic.
That's a fantastic trade.
I was ecstatic. Everybody was down on Herbert. People were loving Jordan Love. I was like, I don't think Jordan Love's that good of a fantasy quarterback. I think he's going to be okay. And even in real life, I think he's a above average quarterback. I don't think he's amazing by any means. So
yeah,
he had a nice little run there. If you go back and look at it, it was more of a run because he didn't throw any picks. He had a bunch of touchdowns in a short time span, but he wasn't throwing for a whole lot of yards. Yeah. It was just kind of one of those things where they were getting down there. He was scoring through the air. And it looked like his stats got a little inflated to me when if you went back and really watched the games and you looked at what he was doing, it wasn't like he was carrying the offense.
He was throwing 10-yard screens to Jaden Reed that went for 87 yards.
That's my point. Or they were getting down inside the 5-yard, pounding the ball with Josh Jacobs, and all of a sudden he would throw a 8 or 10-yard touchdown. And then you look at the end of the game and he's like 15 for 21 for 185 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Everybody's like, look at him. I'm like, well, he threw like a 40-yard touchdown screen, like a 5-yard out where everybody bit on the run, and he's through. So again, I hate to say that, it sound like I'm just bashing Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love's a above average, pretty decent quarterback. To me, I don't want him anywhere in fantasy. I just don't think he's going to be a top fantasy guy. The touchdowns really propped him up last year. If it goes the other way and they rush for 4 more touchdowns or 5 more touchdowns instead of him throwing 4 or 5 more touchdowns, his fantasy stats do not look as good.
When he was forced to play quarterback, you kind of saw that he had some trouble playing quarterback when he really was on the field.
He's like a lot of QBs. When you're running the ball well and playing good defense, and the other team is having to, you're getting to dictate what you want to do. Obviously, your quarterback plays a whole lot better because he's not forced into throwing the ball. He can run, he can play action. You can do a whole lot more things when you're winning, your defense is playing well, and you're pounding the rock.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the Vikings. We had selected Nick Emenwari for the safety from South Carolina to be the Vikings pick. They decided they wanted an offensive guard, and they took Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. Love any team that builds line, offense, defense. I talk about this all the time. I'm all for it. You can never really, especially in the first round, when you got first round talent in the box, I'm all for it. So non-sexy pick, but at the same time, very, very good pick.
Yeah, John, and Nick Emenwari, a lot of people a little surprised he dropped out of the first round, but immediately Seattle traded up in the second round to get him at the very top of the second round. So he slipped about 8, 9 picks from where we took him.
Yeah. 25 was we had selected the Houston Texans, taking Josh Simmons from offensive tackle from Ohio State. That would have been great, but they said we don't need this pick. Let's give it to the Giants, and they took Jackson Dart, quarterback from Ole Miss, with this pick. So definitely a necessity for quarterback. Jackson Dart was probably the second. He was probably the 5th quarterback on the when this whole process started. Definitely moved up the process to quarterback number 2, and that's where here he's quarterback 2. And is Colin, what do you think about Jackson Dart going to the Giants? Because there's a lot of lights in New York. You right from the get-go, you're under the microscope. He's got some decent weapons now in New York also. Is this a good pick?
I actually don't think he's under the microscope because he's going to be sitting behind Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston in year 1. I hope we don't see Jackson Dart in year 1 at all, because that means something went terribly, terribly wrong with the other 2 quarterbacks. Brian Daboll seems to love this kid. He talked him up a lot. He got him. It seems like the Giants brass pretty much told Joe Shane, the GM, hey, you're taking Abdul Carter 3 overall, and then you have free reign to do whatever the hell you want as far as getting a quarterback goes. And they did. They traded back up. But guess what? They didn't trade a ton to get back up either. When you consider the Falcons traded next year's first to get the pick after this, what the Giants traded to move up into this draft, I think it was a 3rd next year, to move up from the 2nd to this pick. Generally speaking, to go get a quarterback, who everyone knew the Giants needed a quarterback, the Texans probably could have asked for a lot more, but they didn't. I don't know what the negotiations there were, but I really like it for the Giants as a franchise. Jackson Dart, Malik Neighbors 2026 might be a very serious connection for fantasy football. But for right now, I'm very happy that Russell Wilson's there. I kind of just wish that they invested in either Wilson or Winston and then had Dart. But I guess by getting both of them, they didn't show too much of their hand, and they were able to get Dart here. So I think it's a good pick. We'll see in due time. We won't see right away. If you draft him in the first round of a Superflex rookie draft, you're stashing him. And that's a tough pill to swallow, but you might get him as soon as next year.
Yeah, it's
Jonathan was a decent move up. If you looked at PFF and the beginning of the process a couple months ago, I mean, Jackson Dart was getting drafted in like the 6th round.
Right.
Like, it was crazy, the rise. I had him as my QB3 in this draft class from the very beginning. I liked him. I had Sanders, Ward, him, and then Kyle McCord. So I thought he was probably a top. I thought he would go to the top of the second round. I thought the Giants would kind of wait on him, see if he got to him. I think they were slightly nervous, which I can understand that he wouldn't get there. And like Colin said, they didn't give up too much to get him. He's a stash. I like him okay. I'm probably not taking him in a ton of fantasy leagues, but if he drops, depending on where he drops to, it'll be interesting. He's been one of those guys all over the board in my draft so far, all over the board. I've seen him like late first to mid second, and I have not seen him in any of my drafts go in the top 10 yet.
If you looked at the next pick, the what we had was the Rams taking Maxwell Hairston, quarterback Kentucky. Guy walked in. Every time somebody walked up to the stage, he shook their hand. He was super happy to be there. But in reality, they traded out, and they traded to the Falcons, who took James Pierce, defensive end from Tennessee. That was a position of need we all knew about from the get-go. So,
and Pierce was our third end off the board,
yes.
So we had that right. So he was still in the same draft slot. He just was a couple slots later to a different team. So yeah, I think like Colin said earlier, I think I think you give us an A+ on the ends. I think we were all over those edge rushers. So.
We were all over those edge rushers. Absolutely. At 27, we had the Ravens taking Mike Green, who
they did.
They got him. They got him. They just got him around later. They stole that
just early.
The Ravens, man. I say it every year as a Steelers fan. I hate the Ravens because they draft so freaking good. Everybody falls on them. It seems like they never move up and do a dumb move, and they just sit tight and let everybody else screw up the draft, and they just get insane value year after year. It's kind of like, I feel like it's them and the Eagles. Every year you go out and you're like, damn it, both those guys ace this draft. They always wait. Somebody gets to them that everybody can't believe gets to them. It's amazing. Them getting Malachi Starks, who I had at 13, getting to 27, I think is phenomenal. Almost everyone had him as their number one safety. Obviously, he was a little bit better in 23 than he was in 24. Struggled a little bit last year, but I think he's going to be phenomenal for that secondary. And the fact that they got Mike Green, who probably should have went with this pick. Honestly, they probably should have got him here. I think they were considering him. I think they were really considering him here. The fact that they got him in the next round is just unbelievable.
I was concerned for the Ravens for the long run when Ozzie Newsome was retiring. I'm like, oh man, there's going to be nobody that picks like Ozzie Newsome does. This guy was the best GM in the history.
Well, he taught a lot of people, so hopefully those people were listening. And it sounds like they were, had their ears open, and were like, hey man, this is the way we need to do things. So just steady, man. Ravens are just steady year after year. Two of the better players of the draft. I mean, the fact that they got Mike Green in the second round, a guy that 2 months ago people thought would go 15 to the Falcons or even earlier. I mean, some people had him going 8 or 9 to the Panthers or Saints. So nice move. Malachi Starks is a guy who can do everything. I remember when everybody was down on Kyle Hamilton because he wasn't, quote unquote, an elite athlete. And how did that work out? He's been freaking awesome for the Ravens. I think Starks is right there. The fact that you got both those guys in the same secondary, I think, is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, we had Starks going to the Dolphins at 13 in his draft. So yeah, that's just
they just let him fall. I don't think they thought they would get Starks because I don't think they thought he would get to them. But the fact that they just sat and waited, and then got the number one safety in the draft at 27, I think is phenomenal.
At 28, the Detroit Lions, we had them selecting Kenneth Grant, defensive lineman from Michigan. They took Tyreek Williams, defensive tackle from Ohio State. Same position.
That's a win. Guy. Defensive tackle, we knew it. And Kenneth Grant, they would have taken Kenneth Grant over Williams if he was there. Grant just went earlier. So I give us a check mark on that one.
29, the Washington Commanders, we had them penciled in, taking Matthew Golden, seeing where they took Josh Connerly, offensive tackle guard from Oregon.
And we took Connolly 2 picks later. We were right in the realm.
Man, you guys are absolute beasts. At 30, we had the Buffalo Bills taking Derek Harmon, defensive line from Oregon. They took Maxwell Harrison. Previously talked about Maxwell Harrison, cornerback Kentucky.
4 picks off on that one.
4 picks off. Yeah, right. We're right area.
Yeah, Harrison, like I said, we had him at 26. He was available at 30. They snagged him up at 30. We had him going Harmon, and Harmon went earlier, so they couldn't get him at that point.
Yeah, just
and they went traded up and took defensive tackle, which we said Harmon. They took defensive tackle the very next round, like a couple picks later. So we were right in the wheelhouse.
They took all these defensive players, and then they just traded for our boy yesterday,
Elijah Moore.
I love Elijah Moore. I don't know why he's not panning out, but this will make or break opportunity for him this year. If Elijah Moore doesn't make it on the Bills with nobody else, no stars, I guess, per se on the team, then we know that it's Elijah Moore problem, not an NFL problem. But 31. Colin, would you like to announce this pick? We had the Eagles.
This ended up being a trade. Originally, 31. It was the Chiefs, and then Eagles. The Chiefs and Eagles made a trade. The Eagles moved up one spot with the hated Chiefs.
Imagine playing this team in a championship in the Super Bowl and then trading your pick on top of that. Like
I know. I think they said like you have to trade us because we worked you so hard in the Super Bowl. Like there's just we're your daddy. You got to trade us now.
I was actually watching. I was watching the draft with my dad, and it really makes sense because, we have Josh Connerly here to the Chiefs. The Chiefs going offensive line makes a ton of sense. The Eagles don't necessarily need offensive line, but could have targeted offensive line. So when the Eagles call you to trade up to 31, you answer the phone and okay, well, they're probably not going to take our guy, offensive lineman, who was it? Josh Simmons. So yeah, we're going to trade back. They didn't get much out of it, but they got something. So, it makes sense from the Chiefs' perspective. What was really interesting to me, though, following the draft was that the Eagles and Howie Roseman tried to trade up, I believe, to 22 to draft Jahad Campbell. Didn't work out, or maybe 23 with the Packers. Didn't work out. He ultimately falls to them at 31. There's definitely injury concerns, but this dude's a freak. We had him going 19th. He probably could have gone higher. I'm shocked he didn't get past the Lions, to be honest with you. I thought maybe he would have been a good fit there, but ultimately ends up on the Eagles. They lost a ton of guys on the defensive side of the ball this offseason. Milton Williams, Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson, just to name a few. So, adding to the defensive side of the ball was always going to happen. I'm thrilled with the pick. Might not be ready for week 1, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But
the shoulder injury hurt him a little bit in the draft, but this was a very, very thin off-ball linebacker class. Very thin, and they got the best one by far. The Nakobe Dean injury obviously hurts, so I think this was almost a necessity. Usually the Eagles are pretty set, so they can kind of take whoever they want at whatever position. This one kind of felt like a need. With the injuries and stuff at linebacker and how they struggled a little bit with linebackers last year, just with guys hurt. Jeremiah Trotter, who was a 5th round pick last year, I still like him. Nice backup, but he was a 5th rounder last year. He doesn't need to be your starter. Yeah, he doesn't need to be a starter. So I thought Campbell was an absolute fantastic pick here for them. Just an absolute stud. He also could play edge if he had to. He was a guy that played edge. He played edge, and they moved him inside because they were so loaded with NFL talent at edge at Alabama that they're like, man, can you play somewhere else? Because you're awesome, but you're never going to play because we're so loaded in front of you. It's freaking ridiculous. It must be nice to be Alabama and Georgia all the time. But yeah, so they moved inside. So he's a guy who can do a little bit of everything, which I think, as we've seen here with the Eagles, they can do those guys. Look at Zach Bond, was pretty much a pure edge rusher, goes to the Eagles and becomes an absolute freaking beast who was up for player of the year on defense. So I love the pick for them. And then, moving back, we had Josh Connerly going there, which if he would have been available, I think he goes. The fact that Josh Simmons drops that far, I think the Chiefs were probably ecstatic. Most people said if Simmons was healthy, probably the first guy off the board, O-line off the board, and maybe first or second guy in the top 10 pick. So we had him going at 25 to the Texans, which I still think would have been a good pick for them. But him dropping to the Chiefs here when they absolutely are dire for O-line help is pretty amazing.
Yeah, the Chiefs went 5-on-4 in the Super Bowl and got absolutely destroyed in their front line against the Eagles. So something had to happen there. They needed some help, So but yeah, they at 32, the Chiefs took Josh Simmons. We had him taking Nick Skirton, but they traded out. So you can't predict trades. Must need position. Probably the most important position that the Chiefs could have picked was offensive line. They had a lot of problems all year long with that, and it got worse as the season went on. The Super Bowl highlighted a glaring need that they needed to improve the offensive line. So can't fault them there for sure.
I think if someone tuned into this show halfway through, even now, and looked at the screen, they'd be like, what the hell am I looking at here?
Yeah.
But
What is it?
we got a couple of them right. So
it's
even
if
more
you had to
confusing.
break it down, if you had to break it down to how we did close the thing, I mean, I would give us like a B plus, A minus. I mean, we were in the range for a lot of these, and I mean, obviously the biggest swing and miss is sure Sanders at 21, but everyone had him in the first round, so that's a wash. I don't even consider that one. And then a lot of these other guys, we either had them to the team or like within one or two draft picks, or we had a team taking a player at a certain position. That player was off the board, and they took the next best player. So we were pretty close.
Yeah, most
I
of
tell
these
you, and
guys
I tell you
did
what,
go round
yeah,
one.
they went to, and almost every one of these guys went round one. The only guys who didn't go round one were Will Johnson, Nick Amonwore, and
Mike Green and Scourton.
Mike Green and Nick Scourton were the only guys, and all those guys went right at the top of round two. And a lot of teams traded up to get those guys in the next round. So like when they fell out of the first round, people were jumping over each other to try to trade up and get those guys. So we were pretty I think we were pretty on point with this one for the most part. I blew it the biggest with the Membu at 4 and Tet at 7. I think were the biggest ones that were like Membu. Well, they went O-line, so that wasn't a total crazy pick, but 10 at 7 I think was the most misstep, but he did go at 8, so he went with the next pick. It's not like I wasn't in the right range. So but yeah, I think we did pretty good on this thing.
I was a little shocked by the lack of trading. I thought, after the Jaguars moved up to 2, I was like, oh man, buckle in, we're about to see like fireworks all night. And then the next trade, correct me if I'm wrong, was the Falcons coming back in. Or no, I'm sorry, the Giants.
So it was the Giants and Falcons were the next two. So
Later,
I had said in my live draft coverage on the Stu with JT Brew, I had said that the over-under first round, I had 3 for trades. I thought there would be a load of trades in the second and third round because the depth, and I thought people would be moving up and back because of how deep the class was. And if you had 5 or 6 guys in the same tier, you would move back and other guys would jump up to get guys that fell out of the first. Kind of felt that way. Yes. We ended up getting 3 picks in the 3 trades in the first round. So I was right on the money on that one. But then we saw a lot of movement on day 2, and then day 3 moving all over the place. People were trading picks nonstop. So I felt like it was going to be more of a trade later in the draft because of the depth. That's, I think, where the strength of this draft was. It just was deep. There was a lot of guys at certain positions. And so I think there was a lot of guys in the same tier for people. So they're willing to move picks and maybe move back. If you got 4 or 5 guys that you still like at a position and you can move back, 8, 10 slots and pick up an extra pick, I think teams were willing to do that. And they kind of show that in the later rounds.
Very well, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. We, sometimes I think people are like, oh, this guy's going to talk 2 hours on every show, so we're not going to pay attention. But yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, we're at an hour and a half, man. We did
we
it.
Killed
dude.
it today. We were on fire.
An hour and a half, man.
I feel like we're on 1.5. I learned so much from talking to guys like, JT with Colin, having you guys on the show and, being able to talk about both sides of the football, first of all, be able to talk about real NFL and fantasy implications on top of there. It makes me a better fantasy football player, better NFL player, better everything just from having you guys on my show. So really appreciate you jumping on, spending your time in the afternoon. So thanks a lot for that. And where can everybody find you at, Colin?
I'm over on FTN Fantasy. I just released an article today, actually. Shameless plug here. One fact for all 32 teams to consider for fantasy football. If you're just getting back into the swing of things and you need some place to start, we've got a range of facts in there. Some as simple as the Raiders drafted Ashton Jeanty 6th overall. Another one, a little bit more in depth, that Derrick Henry had a career high 5.9 yards per carry average last year. So I'm sorry, 5.6. So breaks down a bunch of different players. Check it out, FTN Fantasy. That's where all my work's at.
JT, how about you?
You can find all my writings on DLF, Dynasty League Football. I just put out, should be out here the next day or two. I did a 2-round IDP rookie mock draft for anybody that's in IDP leagues looking to figure out where you need to take these defensive players that came off the board. Got that coming out. I also just updated my rookie IDP rankings on DLF as well. Got to get to my overall defensive rankings, and then my Devy rankings also are over there. If you're looking for podcast form, I'm always here with John on Dynasty Evaluation. And you can find me over on Fantasy and Frames. Fantasy and Frames, I do Shoot the Gap IDP show. I do the Dynasty 365, our Dynasty show. And then during the season, most of the time, occasionally I'll do something else, but during the season, most of the time on the Stu with JT Brew, I've got gambling shows. So betting shows, college football, NFL, all that good stuff.
You can find me on Dynasty Evaluation Show. I am here, and come join me whenever I'm live. I'm on X all the time, kind of putting out my thoughts, my views, my everything else. But having guests like this on my show all the time is what it's all about. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.